Kevin wanted to dedicate this shiur. Kev?
Can you say it to me? I'm using my phone. Can you just say the name? It's actually my brother-in-law's mom. It's the Yahrzeit.
Okay.
Actually, let me get to find it. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Where's it here? It is Masha Bat Abraham Tzvi. So, Leah for her neshama. Okay, so.
Okay, before you start, I want to use this as an opportunity also because we lost the recording yesterday. I'm just sharing the screen. Anna Arthur can't really talk much, but I just want to share the screen for the Yahrzeit of his late father. So, Arthur, we wish you long life for Shmuel Matisyahu ben Atur, and to your family, Kev. Okay, teach us.
Okay, so let me repeat what I said last night in the shiur. So this week's parsha is parshat. In last week's parshat Sukkot, the Jews complained, and it was the umpteenth time that they complained. And one thing they complained about was the taste of the food. They said it was tasteless, even though the manna in the desert could be whatever taste you wanted it to be. So Hashem sent a plague of snakes, and the snakes bit them, and some died. They had a burning sensation. And in order to be, the reason for that, why Hashem sent the snakes, is originally in the Garden of Eden, the snake enticed Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, and the snake's punishment was that it would crawl into the belly and eat sand and tasteless food or tasteless nutrition. So that was like a measurable punishment that the Jews were complaining about tasteless food. So the snake was the appropriate way to punish them, and they actually got healed. Moshe complained and appealed to Hashem to heal, to stop this tragedy, and he did so. And the Jews had to look at a image of a snake on a copper image of a snake on a rod.
Just want to tell you something interesting on that, Kevin. Is if you have a look at all the medical ambulance services throughout the Western world.
That's what I was going to say. The Red Cross, yes. Snake, yes.
Yeah,
I was going to actually say that.
You've got like almost a staff with the snake around it. So it's amazing what infiltrated the medical profession. And I know a lot of personally, I know a lot of snakes in the medical profession, but they're two-legged ones. All right.
I thought that was also a legal profession. Okay.
Yeah, and on the legal, well, that goes without saying. It's like, dude, does a lawyer breathe? Does a lawyer? I mean, anyway. So, all right, I'd like to welcome to the shiur Brendan James, who's tolerating me for another session. He wants to be a sucker for punishment. He did get up at 5 a.m. this morning, which means he's a sucker for punishment. Okay, so on that note, we're going to get started, guys. I'm just going to...
Damon, at the end, you can put me on, take me off mute. I'm taking the video off because I'm riding home now.
Okay, no problem. All right. So let me just tell you how this works, and it's in Brendan's interest to... You want to focus now? So we're dealing with two issues, and I'm just giving Brendan a bit of a summary. The first issue was this question. We were on discussing a lot of issues that Rava had with the Gemara and insights that he gave us. And one of these issues that he brought is he said, look, if after chametz became prohibited and the thief made a false declaration about having stolen it, what's the law? Do we say that if the chametz is stolen from the thief, before he returns it, he'll have to pay the owner the amount it was worth at the time of the theft, even though that... even now is regarding a monetary obligation, or perhaps we say that the thief, as of now, doesn't owe anything because the chametz is lying in the thief's domain, and the obligation is to return it as is. And since it's prohibited for benefit, it's considered like a worthless earth, and he's currently not denying a monetary obligation. So let me take a very complicated concept and make it very simple. If a Jew owns chametz during Pesach, it becomes worthless. He cannot have it it's asur hanur, it's forbidden for benefit. And therefore he cannot sell it, use it, consume it, or have any sort of benefit from it. So if there was a Jew that had a bottle of Sheva's Regal whiskey and another Jew stole it, while it's in that Jew's possession, no Jew can use it because Pesach passed over chametz and no Jew is entitled to own chametz. And since no Jew is entitled to own chametz, it becomes worthless. Do you get what I'm saying? Chametz becomes worthless. What the Jew had to have done, if it wasn't stolen from him from another Jew, sell it to a non-Jew over Pesach, because he is not allowed to possess chametz, Brendan. Do you get what I'm saying? So we're saying that the thief has actually rendered the victim damaged now, because what happens is he returns it to the original owner and says, well, what does the court want from me? Here's your bottle of Sheva's Regal back. Doesn't help the victim too much either. So we're saying because it's worthless, why would he have a false oath? Because he's returning back exactly what he stole. It's not worth anything to anybody. So do we say that if he made a false oath over it, that at the end of the day, you don't have to bring the 1/5 surcharge and the asham offering? Very, very simply, because in order to be obligated for a 5th surcharge, you have to have it on a surcharge when the principal is worth something. Otherwise, you don't have a monetary case. And an asham offering to Hashem doesn't kick in if it's not going to incur any expenditure for you. It's not a monetary oath. So the reality is we can say that there's no, he's denying, he's giving a false oath of a chametz that is worthless. So therefore, if he's not currently denying a monetary obligation, because it's not worth anything, he doesn't have to bring the 1/5 surcharge or an asham offering. Or the other view of it is actually, if the thief had the chametz stolen from him, like another thief stole the bottle of Sheva's Regal, or he dropped it, he would have to give the cash equivalent back to the victim, and therefore that chametz is not technically worthless. And therefore any false oath that he did on that would mean that there is money at stake, and therefore if you used Hashem's name in vain in order to avoid paying money, then the only remedy, if you really want to have a teshuva, is to bring the 1/5 surcharge for the victim for wasting his time, and an asham offering to Hashem for using his name in vain, because money is the only way you're going to learn the lesson. You created the sin because money was more important to you than God, using God's name, and therefore that's the only way to remedy it. So what the Gemara is talking here, guys, about is a case where, according to Rava, do we see potential liability avoidance as being like actual money saved, or do we see potential liability avoidance as being of no consequence? What is the potential liability? If you swear falsely about having stolen it, you're trying to avoid being responsible in case you have it stolen from you or break it. And therefore, you're avoiding potential liability. It hasn't been stolen from you as the thief at the moment, nor have you broken it. But it's about basically avoiding to be responsible. And therefore, do we say that avoiding financial responsibility is the same as it having costed you real money? Do you get what I'm saying? So what we are saying there, guys, is Rava is saying he's not sure. But it was obvious to Rabbah. Now, Rabbah is a different person. Rava is spelled R-A-V-A. Rabbah, Brendan, is spelled R-A-B-B-A-H. So Rabbah is saying that in a particular case, where somebody said, "Oh, you stole my ox," and the other person says, "No, I didn't steal it," and then the victim says, "No, well, how come it's by you?" And the guy said, No, you actually paid me to look after it for you, or you told me to look after it for you." Now he's lying. He's lying there, but he's not lying about the fact that it's yours, Brendan. He's lying about the fact that he's a thief or robber, but he's not lying that it belongs to you. So therefore, why is he claiming that he's an unpaid custodian or a paid custodian or a borrower? And it uses these different examples, is because all these custodians have certain protection if something goes wrong with the object. Okay, now, Gavin, Kevin and Arthur, I really appreciate your patience and being able to go through this with Brendan for a few minutes. So Chazorah is not the end of the world. We're going to come to the new subject matter, because we're discussing now potential liability versus actual. And then we're going to discuss with witnesses potential claimant versus actual claimant with false witnesses. So what we are saying is here is that an unpaid custodian and a paid custodian and a borrower have got different roles. So how it works with the Shume, Brendan, is as follows. Is if I'm going to Australia and you're looking after my animals in my house, you're doing me the favor. So if I'm going to hold you legally responsible for something that's going to go wrong in the house or with the animals, you're going to say, listen, Dave, I don't need a legal case against me for anything in the world. Go get somebody else to look after your house. You're the one that wants to go to Australia. I'm doing you the favor. What, are you going to hold me legally responsible now?
Yeah, we can do it as a favor, then you don't have.
No, you have certain legal responsibilities, but they're minimal, because the more of a favor you're doing for somebody, the less they're going to want to do that favor if you're going to hold them to book for each and every issue. If he burns your house down, there are limits, you know what I'm saying? Now, a paid custodian means that if I'm paying you to do a job, I can expect things from you. You're going to have to give me a decent level of service. And you're dealing with a renter. With the renter, I'm hiring tools from you. So by the same token, you're earning from me, and therefore I expect those tools to work. But by the same token, you're expecting that if I'm hiring tools from you, that I don't damage those tools. And a borrower, I'm doing you the greatest favor by lending you a car. So therefore, you're responsible for almost everything, except if a blow head gasket and it's the first time you use the car. That's from continual use beyond your control. So there's different levels of obligation. So when a person is denying that they're a thief, it's because they don't want to be responsible if anything that they've got in their custody goes wrong until they return it. Now, the truth of it is they did steal it, but they don't want to be, they want to now return it, but they don't want to be responsible. So they're claiming as if, no, like a million things. You sold it to me. I'm sorry I didn't get you the money in time. Take your animal back. But it's to avoid potential liability in case that animal drops dead, gets stolen, hit by a truck, or whatever the case may be. So this is a clear case with rubber where any avoidance of potential liability or responsibility is the same as avoiding actual responsibility and denying that money was given to you. They're both techniques to avoid pain. And therefore, Rabba says that there is liability. Do you get what I'm saying? There is liability, and therefore there's a liability to the 1/5 surcharge and an ashram offering. Okay. Now the Rosh says, as well as the Rambam, where we learn halacha, there's 1/5 surcharge for the penalty for the false oath to the victim, and the ashram offering is to Hashem. And as far as the Chazon Ish is concerned, there's only the ashram offering. But the point of it is we're dealing with the case of, are you responsible for potential liability the same as actual liability? Yeah, but you're getting off topic now. That's a separate question about what your obligations are. What we're saying is here, the question in the Gemara, Brendan, is very simple, is that Rav is saying avoiding potential liability, is that the same as denying a theft? In other words, you want to keep the article where you're actually gaining something tangible. Here, you're only gaining something if something goes wrong. So it's potential gain. It's not actual gain. So does that constitute that if you feel bad about the false oath and afterwards you want to make restitution, you're required to bring an ashram offering in the 1/5 surcharge? Now, Rava was not sure. Rabbah said for sure. For sure. So there are two different opinions. Now, there's a student, Rav Amram, who challenged Rabbah, and he said, look, at the end of the day, as long as you admit to your basic obligation, there is no one for surcharge. Because you're not having a false oath that you stole the article. You're not trying to keep the article. You're just trying to avoid perhaps the fact that you are going to be legally responsible when something goes wrong. So therefore, you're admitting to the basic obligation that it's the other person's article. You're not saying, no, I never stole it, it's mine. And therefore, Amram said, as long as you admit to the basic obligation, there's no issue. And he wants to bring this part in the Torah where it's got some sort of basis for this. Okay. Now, basically, Rabbah didn't agree. He said, listen, you're not listening properly. Rabbah said to Amram. He said, when was that brisa taught? It's in reference to a case where the defendant, upon admitting to owing the principal, immediately returns it to the claimant and says of him, here it is, here's this thing of yours. What does it mean? Is actually actually what he's saying is that the perjurer never gained a potential benefit, because upon being caught, he immediately returned it to the victim. So he didn't try and avoid any sort of potential liability. And Rabbah is saying to Amram, the only reason why we say he brings the Asham offering is in a case where the animal was standing in a swamp and it's not being returned in this time. In other words, the guy's playing games. He doesn't want to return the article, and he doesn't want to have potential liability in case there's an unavoidable accident, because then if a thief steals something, he has to return it under all circumstances, either the cash value of the article. But if he claims to be an unpaid custodian, he doesn't have to return it for an unavoidable accident or something like that. So he wants to avoid potential liability. So in the case where he doesn't return it immediately, and he wants the court to drag him through this process, that's when he brings the Asham offering, because he's got something to gain by avoiding the potential liability with a false oath. You understand? Okay, we're going to go on, but as long as you understand what I'm saying. Now, guys, I just want you to, if Kevin and Arthur could not Kevin, I know Kevin can't, Arthur and Gavin could unmute themselves for a sec. Guys, I wanted to thank you for the patience. I just wanted to give Brendan an opportunity to understand this case of actual liability for denying that he stole an object to keep the object and have a definite monetary gain, compared to avoiding potential liability of a legal case to replace the article. Now we're going to be dealing with the case of witnesses, and how, if witnesses lie, they can possibly cost somebody money, but not definitely cost somebody money. So therefore, it's potential money lost versus actual money lost. And the reason what Gavin said yesterday was very smart, Brendan, that you missed, is he was asking this question on single witnesses and double witnesses. So Gavin knows that a single witness is not enough to just hang on. We've got background noises. Give me a second, guys. So this is the thing, Brendan. If you've got two witnesses that come against a Jew, two Jewish witnesses that come against a Jew and say they saw him do a crime in this particular place, two witnesses outnumber one, so therefore they are believed. There can be false witnesses or conspiring witnesses. When you join us for Makos, we can explain how you check that process, but they are believed unless other witnesses come, say, well, we saw the set of witnesses taped on, and you claim you saw this person committing a crime in Johannesburg. And then what those false witnesses did were trying to do to this one innocent defendant will be done to them. But just to cut a long story short, the point that Gavin was making is that the single witness itself, okay, is not enough to convict somebody. So if a single witness is actually lying about a particular case, he's got the potential to cost money to the plaintiff, but not for sure. Do you get what I'm saying? Because two witnesses will definitely win money for the plaintiff, but one witness will not. And the reason being is as such, is that Jesus, we've got background noise, so there's nothing we can do. Just, guys, give me a sec. Somebody's screeching in the background, my nerves. Give me a second. Okay. So, Brendan, what Gavin was saying yesterday is, listen, a witness who withholds testimony that would have enabled a litigant to win a monetary case is great with two witnesses, but when there's a single witness, the testimony itself would have best rendered the defendant liable to take an oath. Okay, because it's one against one. It wouldn't have automatically won the case for the plaintiff. It's possible that the defendant would have been disinclined to swear falsely because a witness doesn't want to use Hashem's name in vain, and therefore he would have conceded liability and paid. But the payment would have been merely an outgrowth of the witness's testimony, because that testimony is not enough to convict the plaintiff. All it is enough to do is to force the plaintiff to take an oath, and therefore, because a plaintiff might have a conscience and not want to use Hashem's name in vain, it would cause him to probably confess and might save the day, might. So withholding testimony that might cause the litigant to win his case doesn't render a witness liable necessarily, because it's potential money gained. It's not actual money gained. Gav was so far on the right track, and then I'm going to discuss the differences between the Tana Kamma, Rav Chanina, Shmuel, etc.
Yes, it sounds very good so far. Thank you.
Okay, no, all the guys are sharp. Just Gavin answered that particular question, but all the guys have their moments where you'll see.
Where they're either solid or wobbly, one of the two.
Okay, so this is the case. Okay, the Gemara is basically turning to a law of witnesses who deny falsely under oath having knowledge of testimony that could have helped the litigant, because it was taught in a brisa. There are three cases involving false oaths uttered by a witness to the status of a lost article. These occur when he swears that he has no information regarding the lost article, but in fact, he has recognition of the facts. He just doesn't want to declare it. So there are different types of recognition, guys. The first one is he recognizes the lost article, but not its founder. Okay. So in other words, Kevin, there's a car where I recognize it's your number plate. Okay. Now I saw it driving around in Boksburg, and I know that you live near Sunningdale, Glen Hazel. Now, what I should do is I should phone you up and say, Kev, I recognize your Porsche. I recognize the registration. Have you found some tunny that you're hooking up with in Boksburg? Or do you have some business deal? What are you doing in Boksburg? I know I was stuck in Boksburg. Are you there? I shouldn't just keep quiet and find your car there. I should say something to you, especially if you ask me, have I seen the car in Johannesburg? So that's when you recognize the item, but not the finder. And what I should do is I should say to you, listen, I found it in the street, because at this time there were cameras on the road, on the highway, or there's a small street, and maybe somebody has parked it in the driveway. Go from house to house and get some sort of result. The second one is when I make a community notice board or court notice board that, in fact, I recognize that a person has suddenly got an item that doesn't belong to them, but I don't know who it is. So say, for example, I've got a neighbor. I don't particularly dislike the guy. The guy maybe is a boilermaker and he doesn't earn a big wage, and now suddenly he's got a Porsche in the driveway, the latest model, and fully paid for. And how do I know it's fully paid for? Because you get a different license disc when you fully pay for it, let's just say, as opposed to when the bank owns it. And I say something's fishy. Yeah, something's very odd. So what I do is I put a community notice and I say, listen, or I go to a court-appointed agent and say, something's off here. How can a guy with this sort of affordability have this particular car? So that's when you don't know whose car it is, but you know that the oak shouldn't have it. Something's off. I would be, and the other option is when you know who the car belongs to, and you know who has it that shouldn't have. So that's when the person refuses to bring certain testimony. Those are the only three cases. Now, Ben Azai mentions these cases because Ben Azai focuses on the situation in which any of that sort of witness declaration could have either helped him in court or in a practical situation. Let me give you an example. So the testimony of a witness to the location of a lost object, for example, won't guarantee its return to the owner, but indirectly it can help him retrieve it, because in the case where a witness notices like a lost object, but he doesn't recall exactly where it is, and he puts up notices, the person doesn't necessarily have to go through the court. He can go house by house, street by street, and say, listen, I've lost this. Have you seen it? Do you have it? Can I have a look? Etc., etc. So this case talks about both court-appointed witnesses or somebody that can witness that can add some clarity to this particular case. So there are only two opinions stated, guys. The first one is Rav Ami, who said in the name of Rav Chanina, is that he basically exempts this witness for the offering of a false oath regarding testimony. The reason being is he's saying very, very clearly is that as far as he's concerned, potential money or a potential win in court or retrieving the article is not an actual win, and therefore is exempt for the false oath, 1/5 surcharge, and an Asham offering from for Hashem. Because if there's no actual money guaranteed, why are you paying the 1/5 surcharge or an Asham offering for Hashem? Because it has to be in a monetary case where there's some tangibles. But Shmuel says differently. He says that this sort of witness is liable. Why? Because he sees it as different. He says that it basically does result in actual money. And we're going to learn the reason why. Because at the root of this is a tonight discussion. If one adjures a single witness to testify for him and the witness falsely denies knowledge of the testimony, the witness is not liable to an offering. Okay? But Rav Elazar, the son of Rab Shimon, holds the witness liable. Okay. So the Gemara says, in what issue do they disagree? It's only on the following. Rav Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, holds that something that can cause a benefit of money is considered like actual money. Whereas the other master, the Tana Kamma is the general rabbinic anonymous opinion, holds it's not considered like actual money. So Shmuel and Rav Chanina too have that same disagreement, but they came much later on. So Shmuel concurs with Rav Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and rules basically that when a witness withholds testimony that might have helped somebody retrieve his lost object, he's liable to an offering. And Rav Chanina concurs with the Tana Kamma, one of the Tanaic Tana Kammas, and therefore exempts his witness from the offering. So all we are saying is, number one, is that there are two different views. Is that some of the Tanaim say that something with potential money value is equated with something that has actual value. Okay? So it was the same thing before, that somebody that was trying to deny potential liability is held liable for the Asham offering because it's like real liability. Money saved is money earned. there's another opinion that says unless you can actually win the court case, or unless there's actual money where you're denying having stolen it and you've got something to gain, not in the potential that you break it or it's stolen from you, that's the only case when it results in a chatas sort of offering or an asham offering, because it's actual gain and loss versus potential gain and loss. Those are the two major opinions. Okay. So what we are saying is that, look, you can technically you can, as far as some of the opinions go. Some of the opinions say that, like the Rashba, that only something that results in a court witness, which could result in a legal resolution of potential loss, that counts. But if it's just to basically ask the neighbors, it doesn't count. But Ben Azai is saying whatever works, whether it's getting the neighbors to fess up that they saw somebody, or it goes through the court process, either way it counts, because it doesn't matter what the methodology is. It's either retrievable or it's not. So those are the two opinion, guys. Now we can go through another issue in terms of Rav Sheshes and a robber and deposits, etc. But I thought we can end a little bit earlier tonight. I see people are getting twitchy.
Sorry.
So, guys,
I started off twitchy. I've just started relaxing.
All right.
I'm the opposite. Thanks, Damon. That was lovely.
Almost out. Just a few more minutes, Damon, and I'll be in a coma. No, I'm kidding. I actually like this one. I was enjoying it.
All right. Kev, you're going to come on screen for a minute?
I don't know if he can. He's riding. Careful.
Yeah, it's true.
Kevin, if you're still riding, don't come on. Okay. Okay. Did he stop?
I think so.
I also help you unmute yourself, Kev.
Unmute and stop riding. I don't think you are riding, but yeah, your bike's stationary. It's a nice bike.
Yeah, exactly. So Damon, well, it's still on page 105, huh?
Yeah, we're still on page 105. We're on
Okay.
the last section, and then we're done with it. We're done with it.
I must just tell you, on Thursday I've got that wedding. I don't know what time we're leaving, so maybe, I don't know, are any of you guys, actually, geez, I don't know if it's going to be possible, because I have students just until, I'll have to just find out what time we're leaving for this wedding on Thursday. So I'm going with a mate of mine. He's giving me a lift there.
Okay, you'll let me know.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Just message the group, Kevin, when you know. Otherwise, we'll discuss it tomorrow night.
All right.
Yeah.
Shut,
Either
guys.
way.
Thanks very much. Have a good night.
All right.
Cheers,
Thanks, Damon. Well done, And guys, cheers,